Good morning, students. Welcome back to your history video lecture. In the last class, we were studying about the various rules that were prescribed by Brahmins pertaining to the marriages in ancient Indian society and what kind of framework the daughters had to follow, especially the daughters of elite family. Then we also saw how the women or daughters of the household could not legitimately claim any resources of that household. Furthermore, we also saw how marriages of daughters were highly regulated in elite or wealthy societies. Now we look into some other rules that were imposed on women through the texts, especially which we just mentioned, Dharma Sutras, Dharma Shastras, or Manusmriti. So there is one more rule that we need to look into, that is how Gotra of a woman impacted the decision to get her married. Let us now look into what was Gotra and how did this tradition come into existence. So this Gotra tradition became important from the later Vedic age. What happened in that? In this custom or in this tradition, they recognized the Brahmanical text or tradition recognized 7 sages of prime importance known as Saptarishis. And each of these Saptarishis had a lineage descending from them. That means उनके sons, उनके grandsons, so ऐसे एक lineage form हो रहा है. Remember, just like the patrilineal succession we discussed in the last class, same way, even these Saptarishis had a lineage descending from them. And each of these lineage was termed as Gotras. So people belonging to a particular Gotra were descendant of one particular Saptarishi. So some of these Saptarishis you might already know their names, such as Gautam, Vashisht, Sage Vashisht, Sage Shandilya, Sage Kashyap. So these are some of the 7 sages out of which the Gotra tradition was derived. Now there were certain rules about Gotras. Okay, the first rule was members of the same Gotra could not marry. Why is that? If you keep in your mind that a member of same Gotra means they are all descending from the same Rishi, so they belong to the same line of descent. Iska matlab they are almost, you can say, an extended family. And Brahmanical tradition frowned upon people who married within the family. So what was preferable by Brahmanical tradition? That Gotra should be considered while marriage in such a way that people of the same Gotra, that is a man and a woman of the same Gotra, could not marry. So this was their rule. अब रूल है तो एक्सेप्शन भी होगा. This is what we are doing in this entire chapter. First we are studying about the rules, then we are looking at the various exceptions. Even this rule had an exception. We'll deal with that later. The second rule about Gotra was with respect to the duties of daughter, and it was related to the concept of Kanyadan. So if you remember the concept of Kanyadan, where a father was supposed to give away his daughter to the right person at the right time, indicating that he is giving up his claim on his daughter and handing over his daughter to another appropriate man, which he deemed fit. Now when this Kanyadan was carried out, the woman was expected to leave the Gotra of her father and adopt the Gotra of her husband. So what was the second rule regarding Gotra that a woman was supposed to follow? That they had to adopt the Gotra of her husband after marriage and give up the Gotra of her father. So how do historians find about whether this rule of Gotra was followed extensively, or it was just prescribed and people flouted this tradition. Okay, so what are the sources that historians look for? They examine various inscriptions, especially the inscriptions related to or commissioned by the Satvahana rulers. As we have already stated, information about ruling elites are easily available either in the form of inscriptions or in the form of textual material. Therefore, it is easier to reconstruct their history, their thinking process and practices, but it is difficult to reconstruct the practices of ordinary people. So we will not be able to say for sure whether this tradition was followed by the common or general population or not, but we will be looking into whether it was followed in the ruling dynasties, especially among the Satvahanas. So who were the Satvahanas? We have already seen in the last chapter that Satvahanas were the rulers who gained prominence around 200 BCE near the area Central and Deccan India after the downfall of Shunga dynasty. Remember, we have already stated how Indo-Greeks were ruling in the northwestern part of India. Satvahanas were ruling in the central and Deccan part of India. And if you remember, we also stated how Satvahanas tried to claim a higher status by associating themselves with lineage of great seers. So this is where Gotra comes into existence. What is Gotra? Gotra is basically lineage from those Saptarishis or Vedic seers. So what are some of the information we get while studying the inscriptions issued by Satvahanas? How do we construct their beliefs and practices? One very common practice that Satvahana rulers followed is that they were polygynous. Okay, polygynous means they had more than one wife. So this is very common with most of the rulers. They had more than one wife to ensure more sons. ज़्यादा शादी करेंगे तो ज़्यादा बच्चे जो होंगे उनका probability sons होने का भी थोड़ा higher हो जाएगा. And why were sons required? You remember, for that patrilineal succession, for the continual of male line. This was a common practice. Acha, there are some terms that we'll just clarify. What is polygyny, what is polyandry, and what is polygamy? Okay, so polygamy will be like an umbrella term, which a general term you can say, which says that it is a form of marriage in which a person has more than one spouse. So in this term, we are not specifying the gender of either of the two partners. Okay, but when we are talking about polygyny, that means a man, that is a husband, has more than one wife. Okay, which the Satvahana rulers were, or many other rulers were for that matter. Then we have the term polyandry, which means one wife having many husbands. And the classic example of that is, which we all know and we are studying that as a source material, Draupadi, who was wife of the 5 Pandavas. So what else does these inscriptions reveal? One, the Satvahana rulers were polygynous. Second, that the wives of Satvahana rulers, they did not adopt the Brahmanical practice of leaving their father's Gotra and adopting their husband's Gotra. This is clearly evident in source 4th of your textbook, page number 59. Kindly see how it is mentioned, how the names of these wives are mentioned. So they are flouting the Brahmanical tradition by not adopting the Gotra of their husband. Another rule which was not practiced regarding Gotra by these Satvahanas was that the members of the same Gotra were marrying each other. This was called the Gotra endogamy, okay, and this was obviously frowned upon by the Brahmins. But why was this alternative practice adopted? This was seen in many South Indian societies, okay. While we were doing families also, I gave you a hint how certain families in Andhra Pradesh even now follow this tradition of marrying between cousins, okay. So the same practice was followed by Satvahana rulers too. And why was this done? To ensure that their kinship or kinfolk remained a close knit community, and whatever resources that belonged to the family, it remained in the family, किसी outsider के हाथ में नहीं जाए. That is why they adopted this practice of marriage between cousins. But remember, not all cousins. What they did, cousins किस side से होते हैं? If the cousin belonged to the maternal uncle, only then, यानी मामा की बेटी या बुआ की बेटी, because then the Gotra would have been different. They would not belong to the same family. That is why they could marry. Now we come to the last subtopic of this topic. Were mothers important, or how important did the elite family view their mothers to be? Now, if you read carefully, you will only see that mention of elite people have been given. We are not examining any of the textual material and saying what kind of importance was attached to mother, okay. So through these Satvahana inscriptions, if you carefully look at source 4 again, you will see that the names of the rulers, okay, the different generations of Satvahana rulers were based on the names of their mother. It's like taking the surname or Gotra name of your mother rather than of your father. So this was again a deviation from the normal practice, but this also implied that mothers were important when viewed from the Satvahana framework. But that does not mean that the succession was matrilineal. For the Satvahana rulers, the succession continued to be patrilineal, but that is, from one generation to another, the throne passed from father to son to grandson. But they adopted the name of their mother's Gotra, exemplifying the importance of their mother in their lives. One more instance is given in source 5, that is from Mahabharat, and this entire episode is about conversation between Gandhari, that is the mother of Duryodhan, and Duryodhan. So in this entire excerpt, she is basically trying to make him see the futility of the entire Mahabharat war, but Duryodhan is hell bent on proceeding with what he desires, that is the war. So this just shows how a mother's advice was unheard, or it was not carefully thought upon by the male members of the society, by the sons even. They obviously heard what the mother had to say, but they ultimately did what they thought was the right thing to do. So this shows that obviously mother were loved and listened to, but that does not necessarily mean that all the actions were taken after consultation with mother. They were quite independent in their will or nature. So this is it for today. Kindly go through your text material while listening to this video and do your assignments on time.